Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 3. We will presentation about Popular Literature Chapter 5. But before start our presentation today, I will introduce our members. Our members consist of Novitasari, Rizki Wahyu Arifah, Sulthan Walad, Sebastian Viery, and the last is Zainal Musthofa. And the first presentation will be presented by Rizki Wahyu Arifah.
Popular fiction and culture. Popular fiction refers to fiction that appears as an expression of ideology, and culture refers to reality. The word fiction still carries the connotation of lies or fiction, and this accusation still often annoys serious novelists who know very well that fiction is not as strange as reality and show the truth more. Welk, 1993 to 277. Popular fiction is not claimed as art but as entertainment, so that there is a general view in educator that reading non-fiction book is good and educational, while fiction books are not good because they mean being lazy. Literary theory that developed at the beginning of the 20th century became widespread when there was a debate about the position of popular culture in academic world. This occurs due to the development of literary theories, technological development, and academic interest in interdisciplinary research. So the academics no longer question whether popular culture is worthy of research or not. All realize that popular culture is an important part of people's life. Culturalism is an approach that embraces the opinion that by the analyzing culture in society, facts from and document cultural practice is possible to explain the behavior and ideas that exist among the people who produce and consume the text and practice of the community. An example occurs in popular fiction research, especially popular fiction in the form of films, which is often placed in cultural studies. A new discipline that studies the commodification of culture because popular fiction is included in the category of mass culture, at least take advantage of the method of culturalism. Cultural products cannot exist far from the society who create and use it. Kant's 1974 the 11. From this expression, it can be concluded that even though an idea is the same, a cultural will characterize the cultural of the people who use it and consume it, as well as in its meaning. Raymond William, 1998, the 41, as the main figure in culturalism suggests three ways to understand culture. Namely, first, culture is considered as an ideal which is stated on a process of human perfection in terms of universal and absolute values. Second, there are text, document, and cultural practice. Third, there is a social definition of culture, because culture is a description of a certain way of life. And William emphasizes three aspects that are needed in research. First, culture as a way of life. The second, culture as an expression of a certain way of life. And the third, cultural analysis as a method for reconstructing a certain way of life.
Structuralism and Popular Literature. The history of modern Western Europe literature stretches across more than 400 years. There are two studies of popular fiction. First, popular fiction is considered a literary work, so it must be approached with literary theories and intrinsic study or extrinsic study. Second, popular fiction is placed in the study of media is consumed by the public. Thus, its approach like a social and cultural product in the social science and humanity. The theory that can use both of them is structuralism. In literature, structuralism is an approach that developed especially in France in the 1960s with the premise that all humans' activity and their product, including product of thought and perceptions, is constructed by humans and not born naturally. Structure becomes the principle of construction. We can know that a fiction is a popular fiction because many people read it or watch it, usually called the bestseller for novel and box office for film. People who are involved in the production of fiction will look at conventions that exist in the society and adapt them to the film or novel through existing conventions to gain popularity. So it can be understood that the structuralism approach in popular fiction research is related to convention in society related to popular fiction. Lang and Perul. Referring to two aspects of language examined by Saussure, Lang denotes a system of internalist shared rules governing a national language vocabulary, grammar, and sound system. Perl designs actual oral and written communication by a member or members of particular speech community. So it can be concluded that Lang is the system of rules that make it possible for a person to know how to speak, and Perl is the way a particular person speaks. Although Lang and Perl are connected to each other, but they are opposite. Signifier and signified. According to Saussure, signifier is a sound associated with or image of something, and signified is a concept. Each signifier has a signified, the idea or meaning being expressed by the signifier. If in a sound form, the sign is called phonic, and when written is called a graphic. Function of both is to mark an idea or concept. Concept or idea that is marked by signifier is signified. Another thing that is important in Saussure's theory is that the relation between the signifier and signified is arbitrary. In other words, there is not necessarily a logical connection between the two.
Synchronic and diachronic. According to Saussure, the study of language system can be synchronous and diachronic. He explained, everything related to the static side of our knowledge is synchronic, and everything is related to the evolution is diachronic. In the same way, synchronic and diachronic mark the state of language and the state of evolution. Based on that explanation, there are two perspectives in learning language. The first is seeing language as a whole system every time in history, and the second is focusing on the element of language that evolve. In the synchronic studies, the study of certain element in the language is carried out by considering the relationship with other element in the language. In contrast, diachronic studies require research on isolated element. Synchronic is a close study or study in a field. On the other hand, in diachronic studies of a word, researchers are required to explore the etymological and historical origin of the word and study the external effects that affect the word change. An example of synchronic use of the word woman in one or several of Edgar Allan works. We see the context when the word woman is used. The meaning of the word will be seen from the other words that are used together with the word woman and bring out a contextual meaning. It can be concluded that synchronicity is a close study or study within one study area. On the other hand, in diachronic study, such word as a thou, which is appear in old literature works, we can trace this word historically and find a change in this word to you. However, do not need to research the usage of meaning of the word when it's used. Syntax and paradigmatic. Studying sign in language is based on other difference, namely syntagmatic and paradoxical. The concept of syntagmatic and paradigmatic are the same concept of structural linguistic analysis, which contain the notion that emergence of element unit is always in the relationship between the unit and with the other element. A syntagmatic relationship is a relationship between elements arranged sequentially, which is linear. For the example in the sentence, He helped my friend to cook in the kitchen. My word my has a meaning because of the word both before and after that follow the word my. Meanwhile, in the paradigmatic relationship, is relationship between the elements contained in the related speech. An example of this explanation in the sentence I help I help mother in my kitchen. Each word is related to the other word through similarities and differences. The word mother means a person or individual, and it makes sense. It is the opposite of word like a children, father, or them. In the other word, it can be explained here that a word associated with the word that are not written in the sentence always has the same opposition. So there are two thoughts here. The first is a relationship that has the word in the sentence itself, and the relationship with the word that is not in the sentence but only in the mind. Binary opposition. There is a conditioning power in human perception. This power is called binary opposition. The basis for this binary opposition is diversity of realities that exist in this world and how we define heterogeneity. This theory provides a way to understand it by making differentiation from what is in the world, such as trees, mountain, and the sea. Namely, by seeing the similarities and differences beside the real thing that is in this world, we can also see many heterogeneous and homogeneous phenomena. In understanding this phenomenon is we use a classification tool. We can examine that an event or idea or an object can be understood by making identity and opposition relationship with other event, idea, or an object. For the example of binary opposition is we know life when we compare it to death, or we know what is high when we compare it with the low.
Discussing structuralism cannot be separated from the discussion of semiotics or semiology. Popular fiction is seen in two different ways. Popular fiction is included in the realm of literature and literary approaches. Semiotics theory has succeeded in connecting modern literary criticism with media studies. The difference is in a literary context, it is called semiotics, whereas in media studies, it is called semiology. Both refer to the same science, namely the science of science. Semiotics is the science and method of analyzing the study, the science contained in an object to determine the meaning contained in that object. According to the theory of semiotics, which in principle is penanda or signified plus pratanda or signifier and become tanda or sign. Signifier is a concept used to understand or interpret signs. Charles Sanders Peirce divided signs into icon, index, and symbol. Icon is the relationship between the sign and the signified, which is similar to its natural form. Index is a sign that shows a natural relationship between the sign and the signified, which is casual in nature or a sign that directly refers to the reality. Symbol is a sign that indicates natural relationship, namely relationship based on societal convention between the sign and the signified. Semiotics is considered as a set of technical assistance in deconstructing a text or film outside the intrinsic factor of the text or film itself. If the semiotic is not placed in a vacuum, or in the other words, it is placed in the analysis of the message itself, the semiotics loses its potential and can reduce its potential in giving us the possibility to explore how cultural products and cultural meaning work.
In 1960, the theory of post-structuralism emerged, which is often referred to as the same understanding as deconstruction or postmodernism. What is post-structuralism theory? Post-structuralism is a thought that arises as a result of dissatisfaction or a disagreement with previous thoughts, namely structuralism. This theory doesn't have a definite meaning because it involves many research practice, so that it is difficult to define. However, this theory is usually applied in a position such as that developed from the work of Derrida, Lacan, Althusser, and Foucault. The theory of post-structuralism is considered to have emerged as a reaction against structuralism and the idea of seeing language as a stable and closed system. Popular culture research often doesn't lead to this construction of terms. The emergence of cultural studies in the mid-1970s because it was a response to thought in popular culture and the crisis in Marxist thought with the demand to rethink the importance of political economy that plays a role in the process of meaning. This problem of Western Marxism was further escalated by theory's contributions. This theoretical change is also related to developments in literary theory and text interpretation. One theory can relate to other theories or be basically the same as another but are called different. Students are usually confused with the term post-structuralism. Usually this theory is considered the same as structuralism, even though the reality is just the opposite. This theory basically rejects the idea that meaning comes from the underlying structure, because meaning is always a process. In post-structuralism, what is called meaning is a temporary stopping point from the ongoing process of interpretation. In the subsequent process of interpretation, the post-structuralist perspective also flourishes with the development of the feminist movement. In feminist practice, a theory is needed that provides an explanation of the relationship between language, subjectivity, social organization, and power. In 1970, feminist criticism became dominant in literary studies when women's theory was applied to linguistic and literary research. This feminist practice tries to understand how the practice of meaning and sexuality falls within the theoretical scope. Since the early 1980s, literary criticism has developed and varied. Tyson, 1984-92, provides a summary of the 6 foundations of feminist literary criticism. There are 6 bases of feminist literary criticism. First, the fact that women are under the pressure of the patriarchal system in various aspects. Second, in every female patriarchal domain, there are other people so that they become objects, defined only because of their difference with male norms and values. Third, all Western civilization is deeply rooted in patriarchal ideology. Fourth, is if biology determines the gender of a culture to be male or female, it determines the masculine or feminine sex. Fifth, all feminist activity, including literary theory and criticism, aim to change the world promoting women's equality. Talk about gender continue to be voiced in every aspect of literary production and experience, even though people are not aware of it. In relation to popular fiction, feminist criticism is often found not only in textual research on popular fiction, but also in the context of reading involving the analysis of readers or audience, both individuals and communities.
I think enough for our presentation today. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.